Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this other edition of Decryptage. As the 2025 edition of the Intra-African Trade Fair draws near, it is impossible to discuss the progress of continental trade without mentioning the decisive role played by Afreximbank and its outgoing president, Professor Benedict Oramah, a visionary and tireless architect of African economic integration, on the eve of handing over the reins to his successor, Dr. Georges Elombi. Professor Oramah reflects on the concrete impact of the IATF in stimulating intra-African trade, the milestones achieved in favor of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the institutional and strategic legacy he leaves to Afreximbank. Professor Benedict Oramah, welcome on Africa 24.
Thank you very much.
We are in an era where many African countries are reviewing their approach to trade due to global geopolitical adjustments. This involves policies relating to intra-African trade. How do you think the intra-African trade fair fits into this agenda?
Well, I don't know whether trade is taking the center stage or whether trade is taking the back seat and not Turkey is taking the center stage. In a world where it's now becoming fashionable to put up heavy tariff walls, non-tariff barriers, to bring politics so much into trade, and they're pushing back on multilateralism, the WTO, and all the things that everybody thought it could help us achieve, all taking a backseat. I think trade is really suffering. But you're also right that trade is taking a center stage, because what is happening is that globalization is under attack because multilateralism is being attacked. So globalization is being I will use the word attacked, and from all angles. There are so many discontent, those who are discontented with globalization. The blue-collar workers in the West who believe that it has robbed them the jobs they used to have, the middle class in the US and Europe, transferred wealth to Asia and other parts. So you have that. But people are beginning to say, okay, we do things now among friends, friend-shoring, near-shoring, because other aspects of geopolitics are coming and all drawn from the pushback on globalization. So people are no longer, it's almost like the Cold War is back. So many sensitivities. So people are beginning to believe that the global supply chains that arose because of globalization was not the best thing, despite the efficiencies it brought, despite the reduction in global poverty around the world that it brought. They believe it's not the best thing. That it was better to achieve sovereignty than to achieve the other benefits we are talking about. So they want to produce things in their own country or near their country or with their friends and all that. So that brings us to global Africa. So when you look at all of those things, who suffers? Those who suffer are the small open economies. Small open economies were the big beneficiaries or perceived big beneficiaries of globalization, because they specialize in certain things, and which, because the production is open to global markets, becomes large, and people those people then also begin to see their welfare improve, drawn by what is happening elsewhere in the world. So when you now begin to put blocks, those small open economies also then begin to suffer. And who are the people who occupy those small open economies? They are the people of African descent. Why? Because these are the people who were colonized. And the strategy of colonialism was a strategy of divide and conquer. So it resulted in the fragmentation of wherever it came. That's why today in Africa you have 55 countries. You go to the Caribbean, the CARICOM. If I just look at the CARICOM alone, 15 small islands, and so on and so forth. So, and you in Africa, you go from countries from as small as Seychelles to as big as Nigeria. So, the excuse me, the impact of what is going on is heaviest and will be even worse on these economies, unless they did something about it. So the only thing we can do about it is to say, wait a minute, we are a people that were together before, who were taken to far-flung places of the world, divided by the machinations of colonialism. So why don't we reverse engineer those things? So why don't we recreate the economy that encompasses the people of African descent? So like others are doing, we can also have our friend shoring, we can have our home shoring, we can have our Africa shoring, or whatever you call it. So there are 2 billion people of African descent, about estimated $4 trillion of GDP, and that is even, I guess, even an underestimate. And you have countries, diverse resources, diverse ecosystems. These are the only parts of the world that where you have population growing at a fast pace. That is where you have the youngest population. That is the future of the world. Because whereas others are aging, we are getting younger. So what that means is that you are the future market. But you have to take advantage of that market. You have to buy from your community. You have to produce in your community. You have to consume what your community produces. So you have to take off this false, I wouldn't even call it false, the misconceived idea that it's only the things produced outside that's that ecosystem that is the best. And in any case, even if you produce bad things, so be it. I remember when we were kids, we used to have anything that we buy, they say made in China. Because once you touch it, even when they did produce them somewhere else and they are not good quality, they write made in China. Today, China is the factory of the world. Even Japan suffered the same thing. My teacher, when I was in primary school, told me the same, because when we were discussing China those days. He also told me, when Japan was beginning to industrialize, they were also making inferior goods, and whatever they produce, fabric au Japon. Even what they produce or what they didn't produce. So it doesn't matter, even if we produce low quality things, so be it. We are the ones who consume the creative products of the world.
You state that in order to trade, we must first and foremost produce. Professor, tell us the premise applies to creative industries which have the potential to significantly change the African economy. Reflecting on your legacy, the case of Canexa, what impact has this multidisciplinary platform had on financing this industry and protecting intellectual property? What advice will you give to the African nations to help them get the most out of the creative industry?
I believe that everyone that has his mind in his head and the head in the shoulders must know that the focus on the creatives will be the beginning of wisdom. Why? You see, part of the problem we had, which came from slavery and the colonialism, was even beginning to loss of our identity. Part of the fragmentation and other loss of our identity, we started, in fact, we started to despise our own culture. Despite the fact that it is your culture that first gives you the confidence to engage other people. If you don't have culture, you don't have history. If you don't have history, you are nobody. So you make you to lose it. And we long to be like others. You know, the Frantz Fanon, I don't know whether you know about Frantz Fanon. He was a revolutionary psychologist and a philosopher who did a lot of work here. He's from Martinique. He did a lot of work here to fight independence. He wrote a book. It's a Blackface, White Mask, something like that. So that is in fact, that's an apt description of what was happening to our people. And because of that, the little money we had, we used it to empower and monetize those who are producing creative content that we do not know anything about, that is destroying our own culture. So we must thank our youth and those who all of a sudden began to revive the African culture. So we now start having our culture and creative products. So that is why we can now have our people play music and become millionaires. That is why we can now have, you go around, you see people who are now in the fashion industry. Look at what you are wearing today. I bet you a few years ago you wouldn't wear this, you would be wearing something else. But you are very proud to wear, you wouldn't even think of those. And others are beginning to wear what you're wearing. Because actually that's what is beautiful. That is why gradually our culinary is beginning to travel across the globe. And I can give you, and you know very well, not talk of our movies, to begin to depict the way we live. And increasingly, because we are doing this, the people of African descent are becoming more and more integrated, because the young boy or girl in the Caribbean begins to see something that he never knew existed in, say, Tanzania, and begins to make the link. So I don't even think it's, when we talk of advice, the leadership, the African country leadership, they have no choice in this matter. I think the youth have taken, they've taken their destiny in their hands, as it were. But like every human being, the leadership are beginning to see money there. So even if they don't like it, the fact that it's beginning to make the economy tick, because it's beginning to create opportunities to collect more taxes, because it's beginning to create employment and reduce political problems, they are forced and bound to embrace it. And for us, our role at Afreximbank, institutions like ours, is to serve as the catalyst, to serve as opinion leaders in all of these things, to help shape the thought on how things will go. And because we're a financial institution owned by Africans, controlled by Africans, we also use our resources to make sure we promote these things. And that's why we have a big Connects program. We don't have to do a Connects program, so to say. But we're doing that. And in the process of doing that, we're taking the lead in trying to sort out the kind of things that our young people who are actually leading the way are not able to deal with. Access to finance, intellectual property, being able to produce content and own and control it so that over the years, they will continue to reap the benefits. So we feel that those things require certain kinds of support capital. We are in a position to provide that. Other institutions like ours, I believe also we can be in the position to do that. But we believe that unless we show the way, others will not follow. If we show the way and the people see that we are doing it and we're actually making money out of it, they will follow. And it becomes win-win for everybody. And that is what we are hoping for, that we use it to do those two things, make sure we restore the dignity of the African by making us to once again be proud of our culture, be proud of what we are, because that's the beginning of our earning the respect of others. And then going from there to begin to consume our own creative content rather than consuming others. And going from consuming it to internationalize it. So that instead of we being colonized by others, eating what others send to us. And because it's not ours, non-communicable diseases are everywhere. Begin to wear what we produce, not what others are sending to us, and so on and so forth. So we see a two-pronged benefit in all of that. And the two-pronged, they are not mutually exclusive. They are interlinked.
In a bit less than 5 years, we've seen trade volumes across the continent rise from 3% to 20%, with hundreds of agreements signed thanks to the IATF. As you are now handing over, Professor, what 3 things do you think will enable the AfCFTA to reach 50% in the years to come?
You see, it would have been easy for us to say we want to support AfCFTA. We are a bank. We will support it. We will have, we create financing products. Anybody who wants to sell goods from Algeria to Libya comes to Afreximbank, we finance. We could do it and it might be fine. But you will find that you will not do so much because you're not going to see that trade happen. So that's why we had to attack intra-African trade on all fronts. So for the trade to happen, you need to produce what goes into that trade. That is what they call the fallacy of composition. People used to say that happened, the bane of intra-African trade. Meaning to say, oh, we produce the same thing, therefore we cannot trade among ourselves. Of course, that's not true.
For over some years, the Intra-African Trade Fair fits into the agenda of promoting intra-African trade by serving as a platform to actualize the African Continental Free Trade Area vision through business-to-business and business-to-government engagement, fostering investment, showcasing African goods and services, and driving economic integration. Professor Benedict Oramah, thank you for highlighting these takes to the world today. It's been an honor having you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. You can find latest updates in Africa on our website, africa24tv.com, and on the application, My Africa 24.